I want to talk about what's happening in Ukraine, though, and as you can see, the Ukrainian ambassador to the UK is with us now, Vadym Prystaiko. Hi, lots to talk about.
Morning.
We appreciate you taking the time to join us. Let's start with the fact that you were there at Christmas time, weren't you? What's it like?
It's not easy. I have to tell you that I came, first of all, I drove myself through the whole Europe, and I saw that how, everybody is preparing for the Christmas, and somebody went through the Christmas already, and Ukraine was dark. And when I came to the home of my mom, she's with us now, but I used the apartment, there were no electricity for 2 days. So everything is cold and dark and quite gloomy. But people somehow adapted to this way of living.
What is the emotion, overriding emotion in Kyiv at the moment?
In Kyiv is better, but we also went to Mykolaiv, which is south of Ukraine, next to just liberated Kherson. And there is much tougher because the bombardments are not stopping. And even the governor was showing us the place, around the place, and he showed us the city council, which is not habited now because it's been bombed out. And people, even the council itself, has to find the place somewhere to have the meetings and do their business.
The blackouts are continuing, power not available for long stretches. However, the Russians think that the bombing of your infrastructure has not been as successful as it should have been.
I hope they understand that this is just not working. Something our people proved that this is not the way they can deal with us. And in most of the cases, your nation itself proved it, that by bombarding the population, you can have the softening of the position of the government.
Talk to me about what is happening in Soledar.
This is an important place, but it's not huge. It's not victory or a huge loss, but this is important. And Soledar in Ukraine means actually is giving up the salt. So that's the famous for the salt mines and all of this, and logistics. We are fighting for that, and Russians are throwing hundreds and hundreds of lives into the Soledar and near in Bakhmut. We will see how it will go, but I understand they're trying to present to their leader at least something, that they managed to acquire at least something of importance.
OK. I'm just being advised by my producer, Andrew, apparently the latest Wires copy suggesting that the Ukrainian Deputy Defence Minister is saying that a fierce battle is continuing on the Soledar front. We are holding on. But that doesn't sound that positive, does it?
There is not much of Soledar left in the first place. It's totally destroyed. It's a teeny tiny, it's not even town. It's just something between village and town. And the question is how many of Ukrainian lives we have to, spare if we leave the Soledar and we will concentrate on Bakhmut or something else. But this is very localized. It's not a big deal. What is a big deal is, for example, south of Ukraine, where our efforts are concentrated as well.
We believe that 2 British voluntary aid workers are missing. They were last seen on Friday heading for Soledar. Suggestions that one of them has died. Do you know anything more about that?
We know something about it, and we're sharing with your security organizations. We were successful in withdrawing your people from Ukraine before. We still hope that we'll be able to do it this time as well.
Can you confirm that one of them has died?
I'm sorry, Kay, not on TV.
OK. You have sort of dismissed what's happening in Soledar, huge salt mine, something between a village and a town. The Russians see it somewhat differently. They see it as further encroaching into your territory. This war is almost a year old. Where's it going?
You're right. I'm not that dismissive. Each and every small town, each and every square meter of Ukrainian territory is important. What we were saying for quite a long that we need something which will allow us to get out of this gridlock. We can't be a smaller Russian Red Army trying to defeat bigger Red Army. We have to be much more advanced than that. We need technology, intelligence, and training. Something we start to receive. The training was good here. You remember that even here in this island, we trained 10,000 people. Since the beginning of this year, we'll have another 20,000 trained by your people, but also other nations. And equipment. This conversation, this discussion about the tanks, for example, this is what is needed right now because we have to get through these fields, long steps in east of Ukraine.
Suggestions from our Defence Secretary that it will be a dozen Challenger tanks.
Hopefully more.
That's the point that I was going to make, because I was just speaking to the former head of our army. He was sat where you are, and he was saying you need 50 or more.
We need thousands, that's for sure, because Russians are putting thousands of tanks in front of our lines. We have many of ours, but we need something better than we can come up right now with the old Soviet style. Not that bad, but still outdated. So the Challengers, the Abrams, the Leopards, which are in abundance in Europe, this is the way to go.
The Leopard ones, the license for that, I believe, is German, so they have to give authority for that to happen. Where are you with that, do you know?
This is the beauty of situation with you. You don't. That's your tanks. You can give them at any moment. That's how our conversation is going. If everybody who have the tanks, like the Poles, who yesterday promised to give the tanks of Leopards to Ukraine, they still have to get the permission from the Germans, and we are working with them separately. You know, this, you've probably seen the discussion. The Germans are saying we won't be doing it alone, but when nations are asking, can we have your tanks being transferred to Ukraine? There is no distinctive yes. So here, or United States, or in some other nations which produce their own tanks, like French, for example, much easier. And French already gave some light tanks, the wheel tanks.
When NATO countries start to give you military hardware on that level, does that ratchet up the situation?
I believe it's a bit too late to talk about the crossing some red lines. There's so many of them been already crossed, and the thickest one was Ukrainian border between Russia and Ukraine. So let's leave it. It's already too late. We have to do whatever we can to reduce the suffering on both sides and just finish up the war.
We are being told that President Putin is open to talks on the crisis in Ukraine. Is Ukraine open to talks with President Putin?
We were open before he started the war. But what we told that we are not discussing anything when he is in our territory, killing our people. The best thing is to get of our territory and we start negotiation how we live together next to each other for millennia to go.
Does that include removing Russian troops and personnel from Crimea?
We made it clear. They occupied our land. Everything is occupied of ours should be restored to our sovereignty. This is a basic.
And that's Crimea as well?
Crimea as well.
2014, dating back that far, that Russia has changed its military commander. Chief of the General Staff, Gerasimov, is now head of the Russian. Well, he's head of the Russian military. Is now the military commander as well. What difference will that make to the war?
I believe maybe that's the last step. The next one, the Putin himself will have to command his troops because that's the success they're showing. And I understand that the last change. You know, how can he explain that this allegedly second biggest army fighting with the Ukrainians who they lost, and they were talking that they will take over the Kyiv in 2 days and all of this stuff we were seeing. Now he begging for ceasefire. He is appointing his top leader, military leader in command of operation, which he called limited military operations, not even a war.
But Gerasimov, you know, is a pretty impressive military commander. Does this look potentially as though Putin is now doubling down?
He is impressive military commander. I don't believe that he was commanding troops for decades. He is good strategist. If Putin is sending his best strategists to command the troops on the ground, it means that he is quite desperate. We are not dismissive. We understand the danger of Russian army. We understand the danger of this hundreds of thousands of people being mobilized. It's not like, we'll deal with all of them. We understand if they will have another mobilization, it will be very difficult to deal with them. So we are careful, but at the same time, we're quite optimistic. They are throwing everything they have, the last pieces, just to secure the victory, which we won't allow them.
How worried are you about what's happening with the gunfire and the armoured vehicles up on the Belarusian border?
Belarusians, this is the problem with escalation with Belarusians. If they're preparing for what they're doing, allowing more and more Russian troops on their territory, sooner or later, this situation will come to the point when somebody will make a mistake or this mistake will be investigated. So what we're trying to tell Belarusians that it will be tragedy, not for your regime, if you allow this war to be engaged completely in the war. What they're doing, they're allowing Russians to bombard us from their territory, come from our territory, but not by their troops, by Russian troops.
But you're concerned by that?
We're concerned. We have to keep our forces on north of Ukraine, withdrawing them from the front lines, just to be sure that they're not coming and not trying to cut this line, which allows us to, to be connected to you guys, to West.
What more support do you need from the British people?
been generous already, and all the money, all the generators allowing Ukrainians to be to feel the warmth, the food, everything been done, and support to your own government in doing what has been done through this very difficult economic time for you as well. We understand it, and that's what is appreciated.
How do you keep the world focused on what's happening in your country?
We believe that we are showing that this case is right. Nations promised us to give up, if we give up nuclear weapons, we'll be protected. And this is very important for the whole nation. It's not just war somewhere inside Europe. It is for the whole nation, for the whole globe. If anybody will talk to Iran, I don't know, North Korea, they will have to know that the West will hold their side of the word. If Ukraine was promised to be protected, that should be done.
You must be concerned, though, that interest will wane, and also the cost of living crisis right around the world will impact on the support that the Ukrainian people and the Ukrainian government can expect.
We believe that we have to finish up this war, and it's difficult to go through it. We will have to, all of us will have to, pay the fair share. Most nations are paying the fair share for the future. That's what we are trying to present. It's not about us. Maybe Russians will finally understand that that's not the way to live, and maybe they will have better government later on. So this is investment in the future, if you wish.
The anniversary of the war is coming up next month. Who would have thought this time last year that you would have found yourself in this position? If ending the war next month or next year depends on Crimea, what will your president do?
I believe that this moment the president will do what he promised so many times. This is a bit too late to discuss. And actually, Russians never asked us to Crimea. Even in early 90s, they tried to grab some land, to create some artificial island in Black Sea. They never offered us to talk about the territories which were given to Russian Federation from Ukrainian territory in the same time of reforming the administrative borders in Soviet Union. So this is purely theoretical thing. Now this is a principal matter of the territorial sovereignty.
How much longer do your people have a stomach for the fight?
We are fighting so far, and who could believe that we will fight a year? And I have to tell you from my own observations in Ukraine, the nation is very much militarized, which is not very good, but at the time of war, everybody is sort of working towards the victory.
Before I let you go, just give us an idea for an average Ukrainian person what a day looks like.
Let's do differently. You come to Ukraine and see and tell your own people how the life of Ukrainians look like. What about that?
I think that sounds like a very good idea.
Okay.
We'll do that. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.